Warning! The following episode of Blatant Filler contains some coarse language. Viewer discretion is advised. Additionally, we will be covering heavy amounts of spoilers for the following series, so you may want to have watched the following series before listening to this podcast episode.
Hello, and welcome to another episode of Blatant Filler. I'm one of your hosts, Adam, and I'm joined by my fellow co-hosts, JJ.
Hello!
And Jazzi.
Hello.
All right. This week we are looking at Monthly Girls Nozaki-kun, called Gekkan Shoujo Nozaki-kun in Japan. It is actually a shounen series, but it covers a lot of shoujo genre tropes in romantic comedies. So it's a romantic comedy. It aired summer 2014 from July 7th to September 22nd. It has 12 episodes, but there's 6 3-minute-long OVAs that came out afterwards with the Blu-ray releases. It was animated by Studio Dogakobo, I hope I pronounced that right, directed by Mitsue Yamazaki, written by Yoshiko Nakamura. The music was composed by Yukari Hashimoto, and it was licensed for a North American release by Sentai Filmworks. It's based on a manga by Izumi Tsubaki. I guess we can start off covering, this show doesn't really have a plot to speak of.
No, it's basically a romantic comedy. You're just there for the laughs, pretty much.
Yeah. It's episode by episode. Each episode sort of has a self-contained story, and they mildly build upon each other, but there's not a whole lot of serialization within the narrative.
It's basically a slice of life.
Yeah.
And the only really aspects about it are the fact that it subverts so many of the shoujo genre tropes and stuff.
Yeah, it's sort of like a genre breakdown of the classic shoujo romantic comedy, and it turns everything in one of those on its head.
Yeah, it mostly does this by basically gender bending a lot of the character tropes, like we'll get into it when we get into characters, but like the princely character who is usually surrounded by girls is herself a girl.
Plot there isn't one. If you're going into this show expecting an intricate story, you're going to be disappointed, because this show exists to make you laugh, and it doesn't really do that through the stories. It's more of a gag comedy, and it's much more character driven. The jokes are sort of based on the various personalities within the show. Sort of the main protagonist of the show is Sakura Chio, and also her romantic interest, Nozaki Umataro.
Yeah, who is kind of a dunce when it comes to that.
I relate a lot to him on the romantic front.
Well, you basically are Nozaki-kun.
Yeah, I'm pretty much him. He's a pretty funny character with his sort of deadpan.
His deadpan tone and just his almost stern look all the time.
Yeah, he's got a very serious exterior, but he's also sort of a goofball on the inside.
Yeah, I suppose we've already moved into him, but we'll cover more on Sakura in just a second. But Nozaki-kun, he's definitely very, I don't know, he kind of feels stoic, and he's very tall. Oh, go ahead.
He's very blunt.
Oh yeah, very blunt as well.
Yeah, he'll say what's on his mind.
And what's on his mind is usually related to his manga.
Yeah, he's a shoujo manga artist and author, and he doesn't really fit that archetype very well, which is where which is sort of the butt of a lot of the jokes.
Yeah, he's just this really tall, kind of muscled uh, shoujo manga artist.
Who really has, in his own real life, no eye for romance. He can't see it when it's right in front of him, unless it's what's in his fantasy land that he's trying to adapt into his manga.
And I mean, he has a lot of funny jokes regarding that. How he pretty much does random stuff just to add more material for his manga, basically. So like on Valentine's Day, he's taking pictures of chocolate and stuff like that, but he just doesn't really care for if he doesn't actually receive any from the girls. And one of the jokes is he really doesn't. He basically didn't really like the idea of White Day, and then the whole thing with the other girls who were asking him about it were basically like, no obligatory chocolate for Nozaki-kun. Just little scenes like that. He's definitely a lot of his jokes are definitely related to the manga he does, and some romantic comedy, just overarching genre comedy.
Yeah, it's he's sort of the vehicle for making fun of the shoujo genre for romantic comedies. We already mentioned that that's through his manga, but one of the like really early moments of that was when he invites Chio over to his apartment, and she is going into this with a romantic mindset, and he sort of turns her into an impromptu assistant for his manga. She does the beta, which is coloring in the black parts of the page.
Yeah. Another thing about this series is it definitely actually deals a lot heavily with the actual aspects of making a manga.
Yeah, it's not as heavy into that as something like Shirobako is with anime, but it does sort of give you a little bit of a look into the life of a manga artist.
Yeah. And but yeah, that's pretty much the main aspects about him. He's heavily into the manga side of the jokes, but then there's also the aspects of him and Sakura where Sakura is always, well, she's basically in love with him, but yeah, he never really notices any of it.
Nope, Senpai will never notice you.
Or at least not that one aspect of you. But
Senpai will never notice Sakura.
uh,
Because Nozaki is Senpai and he's an idiot. Um,
is there something you want to tell us, Adam?
well, I'm dumb. That's what I'm saying. No, really, I'm a smart guy. I'm also not a manga artist. Not saying manga artists are dumb. I'm just distancing myself from Nozaki a little bit because I relate to him in a lot of other areas. But I mean, there's only so much we can say about Nozaki, so I think we should expand a little bit more on Chio.
Yeah.
Because I mean, she is the main character of the show, and she's a really fun character. Her personality is very colorful, as opposed to Nozaki's, which is sort of humorously bland.
Yeah.
You
Well,
know.
in some ways, she's kind of the straight man for the series as far as the humor is concerned, but she's more than that. She has her own fair amount of jokes. Basically, any joke relating to Nozaki-kun usually relates to her in some way.
Yeah, I mean, they're sort of like the show sort of has a couple pairings, and her and Nozaki are one of them. Just in how the jokes play off each other, like with Kashima and Hori, they're sort of another one of those pairs. We'll get to them later.
But yeah, another one would be Seiyu and
Wakamatsu.
Wakamatsu.
Yeah.
Is some kind of Matsu, not like well, he's not a sextuplet,
like-
I don't think.
No, they never really get into his family in the show.
But back to Sakura. Anything else to say about Sakura?
Well,
She
I mean,
has her iconic red ribbons.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
the polka dots, all them
the
polka dots.
aesthetic. one of my favorite jokes involving her. I really like the first episode of this series. It really hooked me in right away. So a lot of my really fond memories of it are from the first episode, with her and Nozaki on the bike.
Yeah, that. Well,
That
the first episode was definitely heavily into the whole romance aspect of it, whereas a lot of the other ones are more on the comedic side.
Yeah, I just like them on the bikes. How they couldn't. It's illegal to have two people on a bike, but they got. I think it's called a tandem bike or something like that.
That's one of those two-seaters that.
Yeah, one of the bikes that has two seats, and they rode around on that, and it just did not work. That was a brilliantly done scene. I think it made me laugh out loud. The facial expressions, especially of.
Well, the facial expressions in all of the series are really well done, I think.
Yeah, there's a lot of comedy just from the faces. Nozaki's is hilarious because it almost never changes, and when it does change, that's when you know that something big happened. And Chio actually has a very dynamic face, but in that particular scene, what got me the most was the faces of the people they were riding by. On the bike, because all the passerby were just absolutely dumbfounded at what they were seeing, and that was hilarious to me.
Yeah, a lot of the facial reactions and reactions to what basically the main characters do from the basically background, or the background characters and stuff like that. It definitely adds a lot to the humor. But Sakura, well, she also has a lot of interactions with the other characters as well, specifically Mikurin, who kind of.
I was about to ask if we could talk about him.
Yeah, Mikurin is.
He's the true heroine of the show.
I mean, yeah, he's the heroine.
He's based on Nozaki's manga heroine is based on him. Instead, you'd think it would be Chio, but nope, it's Mikurin or Mikoshiba.
He really likes to, if you compliment him, he gets really happy and stuff like that, but then he goes overboard and starts saying stuff that embarrasses him later or gets him into situations he'd rather not be in.
He's really cool on the outside and really awkward on the inside. He's got that facade down, but almost everything he does embarrasses him, and that's where a lot of his comedy comes from.
And a lot of that then goes into the trope of the sort of character who finds themselves easily embarrassed by stuff they say in the shoujo genre, which is kind of how they play it off in the series with regards to the manga character he's portrayed as, or he portrays.
Yeah, I mean, this was another. You mentioned how the show sort of gender bends the roles a lot, and in the typical shoujo manga, which I don't have a whole lot of experience with, but from what I know, that character archetype is usually a girl. But we got a guy here in this one.
I think they do add in a lot of unique aspects to his character, where he's not just this trope; he's his own character pretty much. He's influenced heavily by the trope, but he is still his own character.
Yeah, you mentioned Mikushiba. Sort of, he doesn't rely totally on his archetype, and that's what I like about that. Now, I don't really think that any of the characters, even though they fit very nicely into archetypes, really lean too hard onto the archetypes, and that's what sort of makes the show so interesting and hilarious, is because it still has an unpredictable nature to it. You don't really see all the jokes coming. It's not like you can see from this character's personality. You can't tell what funny thing they're going to do next. You can sort of guess, but a lot of times you're wrong, and what actually happens is more hilarious than what I was expecting personally. I can't really speak for anybody else.
Well, I mean, one joke I really loved is the one where Nozaki-kun and Chiho are shopping around, and Nozaki has the one sailor outfit, and he wants Chiho to wear it, but she doesn't want to do it, so he wears it instead, and then the joke he comes up with is, why wasn't I born? Born? Yeah, I wish I was
born as a slender Bishonen.
Yeah.
Oh, man. Yeah, see, I was laughing just thinking about that. That came out of nowhere, and it didn't really fit with what you'd expect of Nozaki's character. Because he sort of does play the macho man of the show.
Yeah, or with relation to Mikurin himself, like the one scene where he's trying to pose with his figures, but he only has the shoujo figures, so he's basically posing, doing virtually the same poses as the Bishoujo figures, but fully clothed as a guy.
Yeah.
Just little
And
moments like. Oh, go ahead.
speaking of those figures, one of my favorite moments was when they were shopping for figures, and Mikurin was talking about his Bishoujo figures, and Nozaki brought up his figures that he said were naked.
And
They turned out to be
faceless.
yeah, and faceless. They turned out to be the artist's figures.
Yeah, that was a great moment. Another one of my favorite moments was the box gag.
Oh yeah, the box gags. We're really into boxes this week.
Yeah, where Nozaki can't really he couldn't figure out how to draw a background that his characters fit into because he usually had Hori do the backgrounds if I'm remembering correctly.
Yeah.
So he would just fix that by putting everybody on boxes.
And then afterwards, Hori got he was into a sleep deprived situation, and then sees Kajima get on one of the boxes and just slide kicks it. But yeah, anything else to say about Mikurin? He's kind of one of the only characters that doesn't really have a pairing.
Yeah.
I mean, I suppose you could say his manga equivalent does have a pairing.
Yeah, he doesn't. He almost sort of goes with Chio a lot as far as how the character jokes go. You know, with the interactions between. There's a lot of interactions between him and Chio, and also him and Ozaki. He doesn't. He sort of bounces around, but I feel like it's mostly between those two that he gets his humor from.
But yeah, he doesn't. He has very limited interactions with pretty much everyone else except for Kajima and a little bit of Hori. But,
yeah.
I mean, he and Kajima are basically best friends, or I suppose they're kind of rivals originally. Though Kajima kind of walked all over him.
Mikurin is the cool guy, and Kashima is the cooler guy who's also a girl. So, Kashima is actually possibly my favorite character.
Oh
in the
yeah,
show.
she's usually my favorite character.
I think she's just everything. Every single scene she's in is perfect. It just downright hilarious. I mean, the highlight of the show was with her and Tori with the
bullhead. The bullhead. Yeah, that had one of the greatest scenes of 2014, no question.
If not the greatest. I mean, that was fantastic. I still think this show is one of the ones that have made me laugh out loud the most out of the comedy anime that I've seen. And I mean like beyond like just like a little like chuckle. Like actually like really laughing.
Yeah, it's definitely one of, if I was to put it up there in comedy, this is definitely in the top 3, I'd say.
Yeah, we can get to we can get a little bit to that later because I still want to talk a little bit more about Kashima and sort of transition into Hori from that.
Yeah, Kajima, she is basically the gender bend of the princely character who basically has all the girls in the school flocking to him and wanting to interact with him. But obviously she herself is a girl.
She's the opposite of Mikurin. He fits into the archetype that usually goes to a female, and she fits into the archetype that usually goes to a male, and she fits into it so well that she still is surrounded by girls, you know.
Yeah. Yeah, she still has the aspects of the trope, but she has interesting aspects that make her her own as well.
Of course, and I mean, like, again, that's consistent with all of the characters, and all of them sort of have an unpredictable nature that makes them unique.
Yeah, like one aspect I liked about Kajima is the one scene where she thinks Hori is wanting to be a princess, basically, so she's basically giving him women's clothing And,
Oh yeah.
and then
Yeah.
and then later on he transitions into saying like, when I put all the pieces of the clothes together, it actually made a really trendy outfit, and he was just admiring Kashima for it.
Yeah. Hori is another really great character. I feel like he didn't really get as much screen time as I would have liked him to.
Yeah, I say both him and Wakamatsu really didn't get that much screen time, at least compared to the other characters.
Because I mean, like a lot of his humorous moments were bouncing off of Kashima, whereas Kashima also
Well,
did have.
while clashing off of her in a very violent manner.
Yeah, yeah. Um, Kashima sort of was a little bit. I mean, there's a lot of similarities between her and Mikoshiba, where she can sort of have a humorous dynamic with a couple different characters.
But Hori, again, he's another sort of gender bent character where it's kind of the more I feel like he would normally be the more violent, beating up on the a childhood friend kind of character.
He's the tsundere.
Yeah, he's basically a tsundere.
He's a tsundere, and you don't get a whole lot of male tsunderes, especially ones that actually fill the violent quota that the female tsunderes do. And I think that that's just because um, it's sort of a weird dynamic to have that. But Nozaki-kun as the show pulls it off really well with him. You know, he never actually hurts anybody, but he
Well,
is
except
very...
for Kashima.
Yeah, fair enough. I don't think Hashima minds, though.
No, I think she's pretty into it. There's a strange dynamic going on there.
Yeah, they got. I mean, this show is like prime real estate for shippers who just don't really have anything come of their ships. Which that's good. It's sort of it's a quote romance unquote series. There isn't really any romance that
No.
happens
I
at
mean,
all. But
most
that's
of
the joke.
Yeah, that's pretty much the joke. Is a lot of the humor is related to romance, since it is making fun of a lot of shoujo manga tropes, which tend to focus a lot more on romance than other genres. But the actual romance really isn't there, except for like the first episode and a tiny bit at the end.
Well, there was a spark of hope on that fireworks scene that was just totally dashed.
Yeah, pretty much. That fireworks scene was not the most brutalist that a romance anime have done, but still pretty depressing.
I mean,
It's iconic.
yeah.
But
I mean, that Chio got shut down.
pretty hard.
It was a fatality. Combat.
Fatality. I wish I would like to see a second season of the show.
Yeah.
Uh,
I mean, there are aspects like, from what I understand, the manga goes into a couple of other side characters like Nozaki's siblings as well, but
really, I didn't know he had any because I've never read the manga.
apparently he has two. That's all I gleaned off the wiki.
Okay. Well, I think we should stay focused on the manga. And, I mean, not the manga. I messed up my words.
Series.
We should stay focused on the animated series because we are an animation podcast. We should cover Seo and Wakamatsu
Yeah,
because they're awesome.
Okay.
Yes, Seo. She's kind of a narcissistic asshole.
Yeah,
perfect.
and she's the best one.
Well, I mean, there's still Momoko from Sabagabu, but Seo's just completely oblivious over the fact that she's kind of a dick.
I mean,
Yeah.
she takes. I mean, you think Nozaki's in his own little world, but Seo takes that to a totally beyond that. You know, just too many levels above Nozaki. She's in her fantasy land, and she doesn't even get to share it with the rest of the world like Nozaki does with his manga.
Yeah,
You know.
and like the other characters, she's another sort of gender bent character of kind of the narcissistic dude who only thinks of himself in a manga, which Nozaki-kun actually bases two side characters off of both her and Hori, or not Hori, Wakamatsu.
Yeah. Wakamatsu again. He didn't. You know, Seo didn't get enough screen time. I freaking forgot about her for 30 seconds.
Him. You said her.
Yeah, Sayo is a girl, isn't she?
I thought you said
No,
Wakamatsu.
I started with Wakamatsu, but then I bounced
Okay.
back to Sayo.
Okay, that's good. This is far out.
Because neither of them really. There were a few characters. I mean, Nozaki and Chio were sort of almost omnipresent. Kashima had a decent amount of screen time, as did Mikushiba. I didn't think there was enough. Well, okay, that's not quite right. There was plenty of each character to go around, but I really liked Seo and Wakamatsu's dynamic, and I don't think we saw enough of that specifically. We saw plenty of Wakamatsu and Nozaki, and plenty of Seo and Chio, but we didn't really get to see them interact with each other too much, which is unfortunate because I think that Wakamatsu and Seo's interactions are the
Yeah.
best with those two characters.
Well,
Yeah.
Wakamatsu is just completely oblivious to the fact that the girl who he likes the singing of is the same as the girl he kind of is pants-shitting afraid of.
Yeah, he has that sort of a misconception about Lorelai. Was that
Yeah,
man? It's been
Lorelai.
too long since I rewatched the show. Did he ever find out?
I don't believe he had.
I
I
don't
don't
believe
know
so.
if he did. Um, but and that you know what? Monthly Girls Nozaki-kun is Obliviousness the anime. We
That
forgot to do our one-sentence summaries, but
I don't
that's my
think that
one-sentence summary.
I haven't actually been doing the ones in summaries anymore.
Really? I
No.
missed last week's episode, so
Yeah,
um,
the last two we haven't. I didn't. I decided to cut those out.
well, I'm bringing it back for this show because I made
I
that
mean,
decision because
you're the
I'm the
main
host
host,
today.
so
That's my
I'll cut
one
that
sentence
out.
summary. I don't even
Uh,
care about any of the rest of these one sentence summaries. That's mine.
yeah, I suppose Obliviousness the anime pretty much covers it because there isn't a single character that isn't that, except for maybe Chiho,
Yeah, she's sort of the most self-aware, and well,
which
no,
I mean,
she's not self-aware. She's the
uh,
most aware of her surroundings.
well, she kind of does fit the whole straight man role a bit, so she kind of has to.
Yeah, but I mean, everybody else is
Yeah.
sort of off doing their own thing in their own little world, and
Their own little
um,
bubble.
yeah, each character is sort of unaware of some thing that's very apparent to the viewer.
Such a kind of like how Hori is. He secretly really likes Kajima, but it doesn't really show on the outside, and he's not entirely well aware of it.
It's obvious to everybody but him.
Pretty much.
And even if he is aware of it, we never get to see that part of him because at least if that is the case, then he's making an effort to hide it.
Yeah.
He's totally failing, but at least he's trying.
I mean, he is a tsundere, so that makes sense.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
You sort of got to see the soft interior,
You
for
know,
him to fit that archetype.
yeah, the soft interior for the violent outerior.
Yep.
Uh, but
What do you think is Wakamatsu's archetype?
uh, the oblivious character. That's
That's all of them.
um, the
Hmm.
closest thing I can think of is a character who usually has another character they keep it secretly. Again, it's hard to decipher because that's kind of
Yeah.
he and
Hmm.
Hori kind of in some way match each other. But Hori or Wakamatsu isn't really a tsundere. He's a bit softer than that.
I mean, he's not even he's not even aggressive towards Seo the way that Hori is towards Kashima. He's scared of her,
Yeah.
because because she's a monster on the basketball court.
Which, to be fair, Seo kind of makes a lot more progressions towards him than he does to her without him knowing it on either direction.
Yeah, but I mean, I feel like all of the other characters sort of fit nicely into. You can at least tell what archetype they're supposed to be making fun of. Um, and Wakamatsu, he's really funny, but I mean, I don't
Yeah,
know.
it's
There's
hard to
nothing really clear
yeah.
cut with him. in that sense.
I mean, both he and Sei do actually have characters based off them in Nozaki's manga, so it's something along that kind of trope. But
yeah, I guess I just don't have enough experience with shoujo romance.
Yeah, I mean, I'm kind of limited on it as well, but outside of the more shallow sides of just reading a couple manga I like here and there from it.
I guess we can just do a quick rundown of some of the side characters before moving on to other aspects of the show, because I'm trying to break my habit of like 4-hour shows that we have to cut down. So we've got Nozaki's editor, Ken.
Yeah, Ken, who Nozaki really admires, and Ken finds Nozaki a pain.
Yeah, they have a pretty fun dynamic, and Mitsuya was his previous editor, right?
Mitsue, yeah, he's
Yeah.
kind of an airhead.
Yeah.
He's kind of like he kind of has his own little gender bend of the kind of slightly airheady woman who kind of gets on the main character's nerves a bit.
Yeah. And there was who am I? Oh, we've got Nozaki's manga character Mamiko, who is Mikarin, basically.
Basically, and then the other, I can't even, was it Shuzuki or something like that? Was
The guy. It was
the guy.
something, I believe it was Suzuki or something similar.
I mean, I don't think there's really, I think the whole joke with him was his face was the easiest for Nozaki to make, so he basically has all of his male characters sort of like that.
Yeah. All of his male characters sort of
like
look
the rival, the friend, and the.
Which is
That was one of the jokes.
I wanna get back to that later because I want to talk a little bit about manga just since it's so heavily ingrained into this show's story and humor. Quote story.
Yeah. But,
wrapping up the characters, we got Kawasumi, who is Nozaki's sort of manga artist senpai, right? Unless I'm misremembering her role.
Yukari.
Yukari.
Oh no, I was thinking I was using her voice actress's name. Yeah, Yukari.
Yeah, Yukari.
Right. She's voiced by a girl named Kawasumi. Sorry about that.
She's older than him, but I think is she his kohai, or at least no.
I'm sort of blanking on their relationship. She only was in one or two episodes.
Yeah, the main joke with her is she kind of ends up being overpowered by Mitsuya and ends up having a bunch of tanukis just randomly in her manga all the time.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, which is that was let's talk a little bit about the opening, because I think Tanukis is a good segue, because the opening of the show is sort of Tanuki heavy.
Okay, so we should probably mention that we're in the sound design now.
Yeah. So we're going to just get a little bit into the sound design with the song, but also the animation of the opening, which is really good. But Nozaki's opening, just as far as the song goes, is probably maybe my second or third favorite anime opening of all the ones I've seen.
Yeah, it's a pretty fun one. It's got a very jazzy vibe, or jazz vibe to it. I mean, this is jazzy right here.
Yeah, it's pretty good. It's pretty close. It's definitely one of my top favorites as well.
Yeah,
it's very energetic.
I'm not sure where I'd place it, but it's definitely in at least the top 20, if not the top 10 for me.
For me, it's in my top 5, if not top 3, because I really like the song, and the animation that went along with it was really cool. I thought, just because this is a show where actually all of the main characters wind up becoming manga artists in some capacity through Nozaki.
Except for Kajima, who kind of stays back. I mean, all the other characters, yeah. And Seo as well.
Oh yeah, that's true.
I mean, they do get parts in there, like Seiyu gets a bit as one of the minor characters, and
Yeah, well,
Dejima gets.
everybody gets tied into
Yeah.
Nozaki's manga at some point within the show.
Because
Everybody
he's
has
always
some
thinking
sort of
about it.
connection to it, and I lost my train of thought. And the opening sort of shows everybody drawn it sort of like draws them out as manga characters first with those manga style panels, and then animates those bits.
Yeah, it's definitely an interesting designed opening that really matches the aspects of the show itself.
Also exploding Tanuki,
Yeah, exploding Tanuki is great.
which that's foreshadowing. Like, I actually think that that's pretty clever, because like nobody knew why it was there. The show's opening shot is of a Tanuki keychain. Like they were building that up uh, for so long before they actually got
Right.
to how Tanukis were related to anything. As far as aside aside from
Uh,
the opening, I can't think of
Well,
too many particularly memorable tracks from the show. It had a really nice soundtrack that went very well with the scenes, but there's not a whole lot aside from the opening song that I still listen to now, a long
yeah,
time
I mean,
after watching the show.
yeah.
it wasn't really memorable. I feel like it did an okay job at what was happening, but given that it's a romantic comedy, there really wasn't that many elastic songs.
No, and I didn't really think that there needed to be.
Yeah, it's not like it's not like an action scene where or an action series where it needs a lot of dynamic aspects to the songs, or a drama where you need to feel more melodramatic. It's a comedy. A lot of what you're looking at is either the characters' actions or their reactions.
And I mean, a lot of the music is sort of it's sort of tied to the scene that it's in, where that's not going to be. It really does do the job of background music very well. Where I think it does add to the scene. Where if these scenes didn't have the particular music that it did, like if it had no music or if it had a different song, it probably wouldn't have worked as well. But the music isn't the main focus of this show.
Yeah, it's like much like the story, much like story. It's definitely in the background where there is some semblance of it there, but it's not what you're here for.
Like I've seen some like other shows where there's sort of like a musical swell in a particular scene, and you remember the song, and that song always makes you think of that particular scene. And Miyazaki doesn't really have that, and it doesn't try to have that either.
Well, it really doesn't need it either. You'll remember the scenes like I mentioned before with the Slender Bishonen scene. That scene stands out on its own, not
Yeah,
for any
it's because it's
musical cue,
funny.
which a
Yeah.
lot of the scenes are in it. Like another one would be like the Tomada scene, or
Yes, we forgot about Tomada, the best character in the show.
oh yeah, Tomada, 10 out of 10 best
Tomada!
character ever.
Tomada's the best character in all of anime, and he had about 20 seconds of screen time. If you've seen the show, which I don't know why you're really listening to this if you haven't seen the show, but Tomada's the best. That is
Yeah,
just
He's
hands
in
down.
his best character. He's in episode 4, and he deserves a statue.
yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
That's how much of a hero
he
he is.
deserves all of the doujinshi on him.
That too.
But back we were still talking about sound design, I believe. Did we ever mention the ending song?
No,
Yeah.
no, we haven't yet.
Okay. But yeah, we're still on
If you,
sound design.
if you want to talk about that, I mean, we can talk about that if you'd like. I was gonna point out
Oh, go ahead.
Seo's. I was gonna point to Seo's singing next,
Oh yeah, Seiya singing.
and
Sorry.
because
Okay.
that was we sort of touched on it earlier when we were talking about Wakamatsu and Seo. Um, Wakamatsu has insomnia, and Seo's music is the only thing that can help him sleep.
And he's afraid of her because she hits him with basketballs.
Yeah, I thought like I actually never. If we're talking about sound design, we should talk about the English dub a little bit. I never heard how they did her singing in the
I
English dub.
I never got to the episode where she was doing singing. I didn't really feel that strongly about her voice actress. I didn't think she could fit the role as well, so I'm not entirely sure how they did that role. It could have been that they just reused the same voice, or it could be that they recorded
Um,
her singing as well, which
when it comes
I,
to singing, Sentai Filmworks, who did the dub, sort of has a habit of using the original track. Like
yeah,
in Angel Beats, during all of the
yeah,
Girls Dead Monster scenes, they used the original Japanese audio for the singing and
yeah,
just
which I mean,
dubbed the normal speech.
yeah, I mean, they're not like it's not like they're Funimation where they have a lot bigger budget and staff staff to choose from as well. So, yeah, I
Oh,
usually don't
also,
expect well, I usually don't expect much from Sentai dubs as far as other aspects like that. I mean, they
yeah.
still have some decent ones, but they're not quite to the same level of consistency as Funimation, I feel.
Jazz, you were sounding like you're in the middle of
Uh,
adding
No,
something.
I don't think the audio and for Seo singing wouldn't matter too much if they use the
yeah,
original track.
It's
You
not
wouldn't really
yeah,
even.
notice it too much.
I don't
yeah.
even know what language it is. Is it Latin?
I think it should be.
I mean, it's sort of like this opera style music, so they could use. I mean, it wasn't Japanese, I don't think. You
No, it
know,
Definitely
wasn't.
one.
so it doesn't need to be English either.
But I mean,
Right.
yeah, it's not too big of a deal whether or not they reused or not, and it, it's just yeah, it really didn't matter all that much.
You know, as far as sound design for the show goes, I think the highlight really isn't the music, it's the sort of Foley and sound effects that um, add to the comedy. I think
Yeah,
um, a
well,
major
yeah,
a major aspect of a good comedy is the well-timed sound effect, and
yeah,
Nozaki-kun has a ton of those.
yeah. It definitely has a lot of well designed sound effects. I'm trying to think of one off the top of my head. Uh,
I mean, there's a lot of times where it's just a little pop
yeah,
or um, a little like a tap on a cymbal. It's little stuff like that, and it just works, you know. Or the sort of I'm thinking of the scene when Nozaki drops the chocolates that Chio made for him.
oh yeah,
You know, there was some great sound effects there, if I'm remembering correctly. There's like a sort of like wah wah type thing for when Chio is sad. You know,
yeah,
in the very first episode when she's really embarrassed, the spotlight turns on. You know, and they really use the sound of like the kjunk of the spotlight turning on,
yeah,
and
yeah.
and that actually is a moment that I remember the music because of how overly dramatic it is and how you know where that actually did become very relevant to the scene.
Yeah. Yeah, little aspects of that, or little aspects like that really fit the series well, which, if you're doing a comedy, unless you're really doing story focused with a mix of other aspects like action or drama or something like that, it's sound design for those aspects are a lot more important than the soundtrack.
And I actually wanted to sort of I know this is like a bad transition, but I want to talk about the manga a little bit that Nozaki's creating. We're not. I don't want to talk about the actual Nozaki-kun manga that exists in real life. I want to talk about the internal within the
The
show.
the manga inside the manga.
Yeah, because I think that was a very that was used for a fair number of jokes as well, and where the jokes were delivered through the manga. There was a couple gags on Seo and Wakamatsu's relationship in there, and as well as the relationship between Chio and Miyazaki that sort of really only exists in manga form, not in the real quote real life of the show.
Yeah, and like we mentioned before, a lot of the aspects of the show really revolve around the manga, Nozaki's manga. Like, if a character is not working on the manga, then they're in some form related to the manga, either as characters or other aspects.
Yeah. Um, where like Chio does the beta, Hori does the background, Mikoshiba does all the little flowery effects to make it um, really a shoujo manga, with
Yeah.
the I'm forgetting what they're called, but they sort of use a screen. And I did like how, I mean, it's not a perfectly realistic look into what goes into making manga. Like um, the scene where in the first episode where Nozaki's drawing the guy on the bicycle, nobody can draw that fast.
No,
You know?
he does have a number. Well, a lot of the manga artists do that a lot quickly in the series, but it's not
Later.
that it's there mostly for speed purposes or time purposes at least.
Yeah, they can't show Nozaki spending 3 hours drawing something, but I mean, like, nobody comes up with something of that quality just as like a doodle for an example, unless they're some sort of god, which maybe Nozaki is. I don't know.
Are you trying to tell us something, Adam?
Nope.
Are you sure?
Yep.
Okay, I have my eye on you.
All right. I did think it was a very interesting point of how Nozaki has trouble drawing male characters, because that is sort of something that uh, I feel like with myself and some of my friends who are artists, I also just making me like Nozaki again. I have a much easier time drawing female characters and giving them more variety than I do male characters. Male characters are much more difficult for me to draw, whereas I have some friends who can only really draw male characters and can't really draw females.
Yeah.
So I thought that was interesting, that like that actually is something that sort of can happen, and it was used as a joke, but it was used like
Or another aspect of that is how basically every character except Tori can't draw backgrounds.
yeah.
It's like they're skilled at like the one scene where they're drawing like basically a person, and then you see these two of the three sketches they have are really detailed, either manga or realistic, and then the third, which is Mikoshiba's, is really simple. Then it follows up that with animals, and then finally when they get to the draw background, it's just three of the same house images of low quality.
Oh yeah. Yeah, they
Yeah.
can't. They can't all. None of them can compare to Hori's background.
Which, I mean, if you can't really, I mean, I'm sure I know some people who are like that, where they can't really draw backgrounds that well, but they can do better on characters.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a different it's
Uh,
different aspect of drawing. It's not like the skills carry over very well.
Yeah, everybody sort of has talents in different areas, and the show sort of does reflect that, where it's not like everybody can draw a character like Nozaki can, and nobody can draw backgrounds like Hori. If they try, they fail, you know.
Or if
Uh,
they're like Nozaki-kun and they have to put boxes under everyone.
yeah. Nozaki can draw a background, but he can't put characters into it, you know.
He can't get the eye for what's happening in the background, pretty much.
Yeah. So that's sort of just. I thought that was cool how they uh, put that in there to sort of give each character something else very distinct aside from their little archetypes.
Yeah.
Each of them has a specific role within the creation of the manga.
Yeah, the show definitely does a really good job of, while still parodying some aspects of the shoujo genre, still making sure the characters have their own personality and other aspects that makes them more than basically archetypes.
Well, I did want to talk about the animation a bit, because it's not like uh, Kyoto animation, amazing, whatever. It's good animation though. I
Yeah,
think.
they
I,
they they put their budget into the right places where overall it never really has any drops in quality, but it does have the occasional really well done uh, animation for basically a joke or two.
yeah, it's there's not really. that much action in the show. I felt like a lot of the emphasis is put on the characters' expressions, and that's fine. That's really good for what this show is.
Yeah, honestly, the best thing a show can do is, or a the best thing a comedy can do is really emphasize the expressions of the characters with regards to the jokes and stuff.
I mean, like, anime is actually a really good vehicle for that, just because of the sort of like big eyes. I mean, I think Chio has the biggest eyes in this series. You know, she really has those stereotypical large anime eyes that most of the other characters have somewhat more realistic proportions.
Yeah.
You know, so they sort of really do use that as like a window into the soul, where you can sort of see how, like, Chio has really big eyes. Her eyes are very open. You can see her expression very clearly. You can sort of you see the most of her personality, whereas Nozaki, who has almost no personality really to speak of, he's got very small eyes, very small irises. You can't see his pupils.
Yeah.
You know, so that sort of goes into the character design. Even like Kashima doesn't have as big of eyes as Chio, but she has that princely look that you mentioned.
Yeah. Very princely eyes.
They're green.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah, and of course Seo has very small pupils.
But otherwise rather big eyes
Yeah.
compared to the other characters, which I think is good for sort of showing how she has that like facade, you know, where it sort of distances her openness from Chio's, and how she's not really aware of it.
They stick out. There's a few more scenes that stick out more in the animation, mostly when they're moving. I believe in the first episode when they were riding the bikes, the animation looked pretty decent.
Yeah. You also have to remember that's the first episode. You really want to.
Yeah, of course.
I mean, like there was a couple cool moments of basketball playing. A lot of the basketball was sort of shown in still frames.
Yeah.
Which worked because it was sort of more of like a flashbacky format.
But there's also a lot of like how the characters reacted when Wakamatsu gets hit in the face with the basketball, and all the other players are just panicking around him.
Yeah, like there is some good motion in the series. There's nothing like One Punch Man quality, but
yeah. Well, it doesn't really need One Punch Man quality.
It's a totally different type of show. So I mentioned earlier how I wanted to bring. I mentioned a couple other comedy series, and I wanted to sort of bring Nozaki into that, talk about it in comparison with its peers. Because I mean, like, our first episode was The Devil is a Part-Timer, another comedy that's sort of a little bit similar in its sitcom-ness. I actually prefer Nozaki-kun over that show. Nozaki's actually probably I don't know, I really liked this show. You know, it was probably my favorite show of 2014 that started and finished in 2014.
Well, it was my second favorite only because Rage of Bahamut came out in the same year, and it kind of edged out Nozaki-kun just by a little bit for me. But I tend to have a tendency to have a stronger tint towards action series anyways.
Yeah. I mean, like, Nozaki was, I think it's safe to say it was my favorite show of 2014, because nothing is immediately coming to mind that tops it, for me personally. It's one of the better comedies out there, just at least from my sense of humor, with how much it made me laugh out loud.
Yeah, I definitely say it would be in my top 5, probably top 3 as well.
The only thing that really competes with it as far as like actually making me laugh, and still making me laugh upon rewatches, is Nichijou, which I think is probably the funniest thing in existence. Yeah. You know, so that's not even a fair comparison, because Nichijou is just sort of above everything else in the comedy genre, for me personally. Mm-hmm. I think we could talk a little bit about the demographic of this show, because is presented similar to a shoujo manga or shoujo anime, but it actually is technically a shonen. It's intended towards young males. You
Yeah.
know,
Well, another interesting comparison would be it and Sabagabu, which Sabagabu, also known as Survival Game Club, it has a very, I want to say slightly, it feels like it should be more in the shonen genre, but it's directed towards a shoujo audience.
yeah, that's another great comedy from that was 2014 too, wasn't it?
Yeah,
As well, yeah. Not even the same season. Was that from the summer as well?
it might have been the same season.
I
Or no,
actually think
no,
it.
no,
No,
it came
no,
out in a
no.
later season.
It was
Yeah,
that was during the fall, and that sort of
yeah,
like filled the hole that Nozaki left for me slightly as far as like comedy goes.
yeah, it definitely came out later. Now that I think
Yeah,
of
it
that.
did. But I mean, like, I definitely prefer Nozaki over that show. But
Well, yeah.
um, Survival Game Club is great. I just rewatched a couple episodes of that the other day, just for kicks, and it's still hilarious, just like Nozaki is. But yeah, Nozaki I've rewatched a couple times, and it's still just as funny, even when I know the jokes are coming.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah, it's definitely one of the major comedies that I can rewatch and still laugh heavily at the jokes. I think the only other series that have really done that for me have been Full Metal Panic Fumofu and Serokai Yakundomo.
Oh yeah. Nichijou does it for me. I don't think I'll ever get tired of Nichijou. That show is just my sense of humor in an anime. But Nozaki-kun comes like really close with both shows are sort of about character interactions and the comedy that comes from that. And both of them have a heavy emphasis on humorous facial expressions. I'm not sure what else the studio has done
Yeah,
that
they
I've seen.
don't know. They Dogo Bako or Boko?
I think I might have mispronounced it earlier, but
Eh,
Dogakobo.
Nakobo Boko.
Dogakobo.
Dogakobo.
Ah, you messed me up. We were saying it at the same time.
Uh,
Dogakobo. I'm not sure what else they've done.
they haven't
Uh,
really done a lot of other standout series. Is like they've done a fair amount of just more flowery shows, like trying to find an example. But a lot of the shows that they do have are well, they did do Yaru Yuri, but
Yuri
little
Yuri?
yeah,
Yeah,
little.
that's.
But otherwise, I suppose they did do Love Lab and yeah,
Huh.
not a lot of other shows.
I've seen both of those other shows though, and I just had no idea that they were done by the same studio as Nozaki.
Yeah.
Um,
But a lot of their other shows tend to not really be that big in the seasons they're in.
yeah, neither
Yeah.
neither of those are quite as strong as Nozaki is, and both of those actually have a bit more of a Yuri
Oh yeah,
focus.
and they also did
I mean,
Plastic
Yuri
Memories.
definitely they did.
Yeah, that's what it's saying right here.
Huh, well, I
Yeah,
didn't
they
really
did.
like that
Oh.
show.
No, I that was if I remember right, that was one of the bigger failures.
That's a
Oh, they
totally. I
did.
don't think we should talk too much about that because that's a totally different.
Oh, they also did Umaru-chan.
That
Yeah.
show was awesome. That's a fantastic comedy. Um,
Well, it's a good fit for the studio coming from
yeah.
Nozaki.
Yeah,
Well, now I'm feeling. I mean, like I never really knew their name, but I feel like they're a lot more notable now because they've got a decent number of shows under their belt that I like a lot. All of them comedies.
yeah, they definitely have a. It's definitely easier to guess what their tend towards. What animation they tend to be more tend towards making.
Hmm.
So in some ways, uh, Nozaki-kun definitely fits in with a lot of those shows.
Yeah, it does. I still think it's above all of them as far as comedic value goes, except for Umaru-chan was really good.
Yeah,
Um, I I still rank Nozaki above it, but that's the only thing that I can think of as far as other works that the same studio has done that competes.
yeah. Was there
There,
was there really any impact on the Western audiences or Eastern audiences?
um,
Well,
I think
Whoa.
a lot of people realized how much they liked polka dots.
Well, I mean, yeah.
I think it definitely at least helped a publisher to pick up the manga, if I'm right. I believe it was
Well,
who picked
yeah.
up the manga in the U.S. I mean,
I believe the manga has been published in the U.S., but I'm not sure if it
yeah,
was
it
before or
has.
after.
Yeah, no, I've seen it in bookstores. It's here.
Yen Press.
Hmm.
So
Okay,
it
yeah.
definitely helped Yen Press pick it up to publish it in the U.S.
Yeah,
And I mean,
which
I
getting an
think
anime tends to help out a lot of publishing for the manga.
I think any manga that I can find easily in a bookstore is notable
Hmm.
Yeah.
because most of them are only available online through fan translations, but something that's gotten big enough to get an official translation and physical copies out in the open that people are buying consistently, that's actually notable. I mean, I think Nichijo's manga actually just got brought over. There's only 1 or 2 volumes out of it in English, but Nozaki-kun's has a few volumes out now, and I think it's doing pretty well.
Hmm.
I don't
Yeah,
hear
that
too
sounds about
much
right.
about I don't hear too much about the manga, but I think that just might be due to my particular social circles.
Yeah,
Um,
well, it only came out recently here. It
Yeah,
came
yeah,
out
it could
in.
take a while before it to really get any way of noteworthy.
but
Mm,
I do think that I think there's a lot of uh, I'm not sure what sort of impact Nozaki might have had on the comedy genre, but I don't see any shows out there that seem to be inspired by Nozaki. Like it didn't change comedy in anime the way that
Well,
Madoka Magica changed magical
yeah,
girl anime. So I wouldn't particularly call it influential. However, I do think that it has sort of cemented itself in a spot of notoriety in the genre
yeah,
because I
yeah.
do hear people talk about like when people are talking about comedy anime, they talk about Nozaki.
but let's see. Next up would be side by side series. Any shows you'd recommend alongside it?
Well, I think we already talked a bit about that.
Yeah, I mean,
Um,
Mhm.
yeah, like Sabu Gabu, it's a good one. We did kind of mention it before, but if you want something that more closely examines the process of making anime, Shirobako is a good one to go by.
Shibaka is fantastic. It also has a
Yeah.
somewhat similar animation style, even though it's from different studios.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Let's see what else.
Um,
If you're wanting a bit of a yeah, but if you're looking for something that's a bit more of a subversion of the romance genre, I'd probably recommend My Love Story because it
oh
brings
yeah,
it goes far more deeper into the actual relationship aspects than what most romance series go by.
I
yeah,
think my recommendations, just as far as a really good character-driven comedy, is of course Nichijou. I'm hesitant to point to Sedakai Yakinamo, but I feel like I should give it a shout out because it's really funny if you
Yeah,
like
just
dirty
it is.
jokes.
yeah.
Just it
If you
it is
really like
lewd
dirty
humor.
it's rapid fire sex jokes basically.
Yeah. So it handles comedy in a different way, but if it works for you, it's very funny. But I feel like Sabagabu and Nichijou are my sort of go-to from Nozaki. If you like this, you'll probably like that.
Mhm. Uh, I guess I'd recommend the new one. Haven't you heard? I'm Sakamoto.
Oh yeah, Sakamoto. Yeah,
Yeah, it
that's another
comes a little
solid
close.
show.
That's another one with the stoic main male lead.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Well, now that we've got recommendations out of the way, I want to thank all of you for listening to this episode of Blatant Filler. If you'd like to get into contact with myself or JJ or Jazzi, our Twitter handles are in the description below. If you're watching this on YouTube, it would be awesome if you could subscribe to the channel if you like the video and want to see more. If you're listening to this on iTunes, we would really appreciate a review Hopefully, it's a good one. Either way, it helps us. It helps us out. We can improve. And if you agree with anything that we said in this podcast or disagree with anything we said and want to have a bit of a conversation, there's the comments section under the YouTube video as well. And also, if we forgot anything, if there was anything that we didn't bring up, anything regarding the show, or if you just want to leave a smiley face, that's appreciated as well. Until next time, later.
Bye-bye.
So,
You should always read the contracts before you sign them.
you're correct.
Just ignore that part where I'm selling off your soul to the devil. We
soup.
we stoop.
We are soup.
The polka dot fetish.
Yeah.
Yeah, they don't need to know about my polka dot fetish.
No, that's for our ears only.
No, I just want to be held princess style by Kashima and maybe Zarya. Yay, you did it. You didn't screw us by putting us over time. Ooh, you're not actually late. Did they blow their load?
That's really fascinating to me. I'm not gonna watch it because I don't give a shit about 17 again, the anime.